So we got Purple Politics today. We got Michelle Hang in the place. It's great to see you. She's been a friend of mine for maybe like 3 years.
Yeah.
We met at church. We've served a little bit around there together, and then we've always mutually bonded on being founders of businesses and kind of walking through that territory, that chaos, that fun of what it's like to be a business owner. And it's certainly changed a little bit in the recent climate. And I think you have a lot to speak on that because you have businesses rising, falling. But you also have been a person that I've just seen always externally trying to push for kindness and hope and patience. And you've always relied on God to be able to serve and to get you places. And it's been really cool to, be your friend from like a semi-far distance. And so it's cool. How you doing today?
I am doing amazing. Thanks for having me. It's been the Mondayest Monday ever. Like it's just been a day, but I'm great. I'm doing fantastic. How about yourself?
It's been a pretty good day. It's the sun is shining. I was able to get outside and get in a run. And so whenever I can start my day off with like a good smoothie, a run, I feel like I'm making something happen, even though nothing had happened yet.
Exactly. Today's Monday start was like, okay, I have to go get COVID tested. I don't like this cough. So let me go do this run and then have my phone calls while I'm on the way to COVID. It was a hot mess, but I'm here at home now. So yeah.
So you are the founder and CEO of Everlaunch.
Yes.
And
co-founder. I have my work wife. Can't leave her out of it.
I love it. I was always on a co-founding team too. So what is that all about? And what can you share to the people listening about Everlaunch?
So Everlaunch is an all-in-one business building platform that provides the tools and resources that first-time entrepreneurs need to start and launch their business. So essentially what that means is that we created a platform, an interactive platform where you can come, and if you don't know where to start a business, this is the perfect place to go. We broke it down to like 8 high-level steps and categories so that you can not only go through the process of building a business, but you're actually learning some hacks that we've personally used. We put the resources and partner with resources and tools that we personally have used as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we just try to make business building fun. That's like our whole mission is like, let's make business building not this complicated 5,000 hour process where you're scouring the internet for hundreds and thousands of resources you're never going to go back to, and you're saving them all in your bookmark.
Yeah.
As a founder, like the internet is your like best friend and your enemy at the same time, because you're like, where do I find this? Who do I talk to for this? And so our goal with, even though we're still in beta, is we want to be the one-stop shop for everyone building a business. Because we know that every single person who starts a business goes through, I need a logo, I need branding, I need marketing help. What's my legal structure? Like, how do I even organize my business? How do I go about pricing my product or service? Or, like, where do I go for finding money? And so our goal is to eliminate all those questions by creating this literal streamlined process where the new founders are educated. They feel not overwhelmed because not all the information is literally broken down into tiny pieces where you're like, okay, step 1, literally step 1, not step 1 through 20. And then right. I don't know what's actually actionable from a checklist you found on Google, So yeah.
Well, that's what always is so difficult when I watch friends try to start businesses, because they obviously know day one that like part of inception of, wow, I just had this great conversation. I found where my asset kind of lies and where I can help the world exist better. And then they see this dream with, it's them on a boat after they've sold this company, or it's them running this company and it's in full effect with 150 employees and it's just crushing it. It's so difficult that first 3 months to set some goals and expectations of what that 3 months looks like. Have the patience that not all of those goals are always going to happen, but then walk day 1 to day 30 to then day 60 with like some level of structure and expectations. And so for you to not only put that into a a place where you can walk down that line. But then it sounds like you also gamify it a little bit, because I know you're like a gamer at heart.
I am born and raised a gamer, literally. We did gamify the process. Right now, because it's in beta, there's still a bunch of billion things that I want to add to it. But the most gamified aspect is the progress bar, the ability to unlock a section. So because I have ADHD, I know what it's like to have access to resources and not know where to go first. So I purposely locked each section until you complete one. And that's also based on feedback that I received from users, this idea of, I want to click on everything, and I want to click on the things that actually speak to me the most, like,
Right.
Of course, branding. That's usually the first thing people want to go towards. Is just kind of like, I want to, design things and whatever, and the more creative aspect. But I'm like, no, I think I want you to focus on actually understanding what your product and service is before you get into branding. Because the mistake a lot of people make, which I've seen, is they want to brand something they haven't even put onto paper yet. And as a founder, that you can pivot way before you even put your logo on, into a designer's hands, right?
Sure, 100%.
And so we really spent time trying to understand, not only like the hundreds of resources that we went through, but also the process most founders take and what could potentially be their downfall. And we made a educated guesstimate of what the order should be. And so we basically locked each section based on the process I think an entrepreneur would feel better after completing. Like,
right.
All right, if I complete this, I at least now have a better understanding of this section of my business. So then I can move in to a more relevant aspect like branding. Like, okay, now I have a product and service. I know the names for the product. I know what I'm going to price it as. Now I can make it all pretty and color it. But even before you get into the actual branding stuff, like the design and all that, we still work on the logistics of your brand, which is kind of like, did you check on the trademark website if your brand name is taken?
Right.
Which another huge mistake I see people do all the time. Like, yeah, what's a trademark website? And I'm like, why do you have a business name without checking this?
Sure.
So it's kind of like, so yeah, so we put a lot of thought into the beta and tried our best to figure out what's a fun way to just eliminate some pain points, which is unlocking this, like making it progressive and exciting. Like when something's actionable, you check it off a to-do list, you want to go on to the next thing. So that's kind of the gamified portion to it.
And I think it's so important to, have the long vision obviously drawn out in your head, and then slowly fill it now in those gaps truly on paper. I remember being like, a person who would get excited on phone calls, be able to talk through the whole process of, okay, this is what we're doing, this is the plan. This is what we need to invest, or this is where the location that we hope to be able to place it inside your space. And then the scary thing, someone would say, all right, perfect. I love everything you said. Can you just write that down and send it to me? And I'm like, oh no. Luckily, I had unbelievable co-founders, and we built that structure over a few years, right? Where that was finally, we had a great living, breathing business plan, and all these strategies and expectations were all ultimately laid out. But for a person, if I were like doing that alone, that would be a task that would be very difficult, because there's some skill sets that I definitely lacked early on, that I'm still kind of filling in the gaps of. But having the ability to just like sit and focus in that space and not always have to worry about tomorrow, but have that step in front of you, like, let's just achieve this today. And if we achieve this today, that means that your business now has the ability to see the future. That's important.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I love, Everlaunch, because the recurring compliment that we get is, I wish I had this when I first started. And that alone makes me feel like, man, we are on the right track, because there's so much that, there's so much in that sentence alone. It's just kind of inspiring to be like, oh, cool. Like if this person who already has established business says that they wish they had this, that means whoever doesn't have this is going to find this to be such a resourceful, like app, and that's just like my hope
Yeah.
in general.
Can people go and find Everlaunch now to be clients in that,
Yeah.
or you just okay?
Yeah. So Everlaunch is live as a beta, and we haven't been really like marketing on purpose because my goal is to kind of be hands-on with the people who are joining, and we're kind of creating small little campaigns so that we can just work with the founders who sign up and say, hey, what do you think can improve, and how can we like help you fill in the gap? Like if you didn't find a certain resource, like if you're looking for something or for a
Yeah.
specific business, kind of like try our best to kind of keep it small right now before we go crazy with our press release, which is hopefully in the next 2 weeks,
Cool.
because we're creating a new initiative that stemmed from like the whole Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay.
But we can get more in that detail soon.
Mm-hmm.
However, yes, Everlaunch, it's everlaunch.io, and on social media it's try Everlaunch if you want to like follow it and stuff. But for the most part, we are live, and we are still looking for users to test it and see what they think. And yes.
Cool. So that user that's like young, has an idea, but also wants to be, I think it's not only important for someone to come on and use that app now, but also to have the experience of being a beta tester is a good experience for a founder as well. To just realize, you know what, they might look at Everlaunch and say, wow, this thing seems perfect. But you're willing to sit here as a co-founder and say, we're not perfect yet, and we need help. And we need, enthusiastic people to kind of push the boundaries of what our app and system looks like, for we can have the future that we hope for. And I think that's really cool to be able to bring other people onto that space, and they could learn a lot from your business and theirs at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're hoping.
Right. So transitioning, this space of COVID has, drastically changed your life a little bit, right? So you did lose a business during this time.
I lost a lot of things this year. Yes, I did lose a business. I had an event space in downtown LA, and it was primed to just bring us a lot of income. We had bookings from February to probably the end of year, and COVID shut all of it down to the point that we ended up losing money because my husband and I both lost our income stream, as well as just having people cancel on us.
Sure.
And unfortunately, because it was COVID, we didn't have this protection where they would pay the 50% kind of thing. So it was really difficult. And we ultimately had to say goodbye to our beautiful little space, which was my pride and joy, because I've dreamt to have an event space, because I've planned events for as long as I can remember. I'm so big on community, so big on bringing people together. And that was the initial reason me and my husband, then boyfriend, actually launched that space. It was to bring people together. It was literally a launch pad. And that was Launchpad DTLA. And we were so proud of it. So for us, it was kind of like a successful failure because one, we tested the market. It was good. Now it was no longer good during COVID. So that was really hard and difficult, but it wasn't all a loss. We made amazing relationships with really incredible people. We utilized it. We were creative. So it got definitely, the bang for the buck, but for the most part, it was unfortunate that COVID did, destabilize business.
Well, and it's always so difficult, I think, when these things are happening, to realize that you're not the only one this is happening to, but at the same time, it's deeply personal, right? Like, this is your little baby, and it hurts. And to deal with that pain and, kind of watching it happen throughout the entire system, that's brutal. And I always think it's kind of bizarre because we've been watching different politicians and stuff, saying that they're providing, assistance to these types of businesses, right? Like these small businesses. And when you're a reeling small business that's actually being legitimately affected right now today, you don't have time to go on these governmental websites and even to apply in those spaces, right?
You want to know what's funny, right? What the most interesting aspect of that process, because we did try to apply, but
Sure.
you know how much they were offering us? $2,000. That's it, $2,000. I was like, we've spent over 10 grand on trying to get this business set up. We were primed to make over like triple that. And now you're telling us that we're only getting $2,000 to cover our rent. You know, like that's not even a quarter of our rent, you know?
Right.
So it's kind of like, you know, it's unfortunate because the way they're assessing how much money to give you is based on the monthly aspect of like, okay, well, you just started this business, you know, if you count the money we made from then to now, you know, it's not, you know, like it doesn't, there's no, how do you call it? There's no, I don't know, there's no like foundation for them to tell, okay, this is how much money, like what about the money that we currently just lost, like our clients that we just lost.
Right.
And so like that, it was just such an unfair process. And it's, you know, like, yeah, $2,000. Okay, cool. I can use that to like cover something.
It's just so weird to think that like it would be more monetarily beneficial for you and your business, for your, both your husband and yourself to file for unemployment.
No, but it was.
Yeah, right.
It was.
So that would be a smarter, that's a smarter like positioning of how to act in this time is like, okay, like file unemployment. Now we're both making like $4,000 a month. Now you actually maybe have a chance to say, okay, we could figure this out and then get rental assistance. But in some of those decision making, you're like, shit, like your ego kind of gets involved and you're like, well, you know, am I draining the system? Am I helping it? But am I doing this for myself and my future family? It's these weird issues that kind of pop up, and they say they're assisting small businesses, but that's just not what happened.
It's not an assistance at all. Like I get it. It's like, I get how they structured it, but you know, you can't account for the losses that are currently happening. And that's what is painful, you know, like that's the difficult aspect of like trying to pivot during this time. It's like, well, if we don't cover what we're losing in the next however long you're trying to, you know, the government shutdown and all these other things, like just not the government shutdown, but like the shutting down of like the cities and not being able to, you know, especially for this type of industry where all of our, you know, business is done in person, you know, and so like, and I get it. Of course they need to shut it down. Like people are dying. There's infection.
We get it.
It's a real thing, you know, for the people who don't think it's a real thing, I think it's a real thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, it was difficult because we had to acknowledge that, okay, this is something that is not just going to pass. And the help that is being offered doesn't really necessarily help our specific case because it's not covering what we're losing. So we had to decide, it's like, all right, it's time to, you know, it's time to shut it down. And that decision for me was very difficult because it wasn't the only decision that I had to make during this time. And I think I mentioned earlier before we started, like I lost my brother. And so I had to fly to New Jersey. And on top of making all those decisions at the same time, it's like, all right, like I'm the only person who can take care of this for my family. Like I, you know, like, and then me and my husband trying to navigate, how are we going, you know, like, because our event space was a live work loft, you know, like the space was at the bottom, we lived on top of it.
Yeah.
Like, where we're going to move our entire existence, you know? And so there was like so much that COVID really affected in, you know, both me and my husband's, like my husband works in entertainment. All of production is shut down. And even now, as he's going on to prepare for a movie, you know, in another country, nonetheless, the production is also getting pushed back. One, because environmental factors, they just had a hurricane in the Dominican Republic is
wow.
The movie. But at the same time, COVID is also a factor for production. So everyone, every single industry is trying to navigate, you know, COVID waters, and for lack of better words. And it's really affecting how we're making money. But I did find another way to make money, hilariously enough. And so I started the brand and social media management agency, which has been incredible and awesome and exciting because people are still building brands, still building businesses. Perfectly ties in everything I love to do, which is like, you know, building a business right now is perfect because when we're at home, we have a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's also why Everlunch is great because you can do all of that online.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's been crazy and emotional because, you know, losing a business is no joke. And
Sure.
having to, like you said, your ego kind of like check it and be like, hey, this is not, like, having to remind yourself that this is not the end, that, you know, like when things pass, and hopefully they will sooner than later, we know now that the event space did work, and, you know, it was bringing in money. So this is something that we can rebuild down the line, and, you know, not only rebuild it, but maybe even make it bigger.
Sure.
Is exactly what, you know, my husband and I are looking forward to. So
yeah, it is interesting because I see people talking about like what's happened with COVID, and I'm not a person that's scared of COVID, but I do think we have to act appropriate and reasonable with it. I'm like, wear a mask, and if you're going to wear a mask, for sure wear it in a grocery store. Don't bother the person who's a grocery store worker. But I also think you need to get outside and go run on the beach.
yeah.
And if you go run on the beach, I don't really care if you wear a mask, wear it at your own discretion. I don't know.
I feel like it's better outdoors than, you know, like than going to, you know, a Trader Joe's and not.
If you're at Trader Joe's without a mask on right now, you are a prick. That's just real. And then once we're outside, then I think there's a different discussion to have.
Yeah. My favorite thing is, I was literally just talking to this with one of my clients before this call. It's kind of like, you know, I'm glad you got your PhD in Google. However, you are not a health professional at all. So sit down, you know, right. And like half the people making these statistic things are not health professionals who got their degrees, spent their time studying how flus and vaccines and all this beautiful, wonderful science that we have access to works. Like, you don't know how it works. And until you get a PhD and freaking, you know, like whatever you need to get a PhD in to actually tell me how COVID works, then I don't want to hear it. Like, I don't care.
And you're so right, because I am proud that I can say the word epidemiologist.
Same.
And that is about as far as I can go with understanding that, right? Like, it takes me a second to even get that out. And so I still have an opinion on it, but I understand that my opinion needs to be taken with, like, not a grain of salt, but pretty much like half the bottle. But, you know, and then I think there is some like practical logic in some of this stuff too. But we got to keep on learning about this thing. It's chaos. I don't operate from a place of fear.
In my mind, I'm like, okay, if health professionals who spent 30 years studying I can never say the word
epidemiology.
If they spent, you know, 30 years of their career in this field, you know, like that's what I don't understand. I was like, this person is an expert. And if they are still learning what's happening, what makes us or gives us the right to even comment your literal opinion against an expert whose life's work is dedicated in this field means zilch. Literally nobody. Like, you're nobody. You're literally nobody. If you haven't even taken a class, like, even then you're still nobody. And it's funny because I've had friends and I've had people who are like, yeah, but, you know, statistics say that it's only 1%. I was like, great. I'm glad that you can read. Like, you know, like, I'm glad that you can read. But actually, do you know what, you know, the doctors are saying? Do you know the research? Are you going, you know, are you looking up the universities who are studying, you know, like, mm-hmm. Like what institute are you looking at?
Yeah.
If it's our federal government, then you have failed already before you even started. So like, that's just my 2 cents. I'm like, listen, if someone wants to, you know, come for me for that, I'll just tell you to sit down because you're not an expert anyway. So
100%. My whole like grief with it, I guess, is you're not going to get me to operate from a point of fear. That's the whole thing. Like, it's just not the way that I tick. But that doesn't mean that, like, my optimism and not fear of this virus doesn't mean that I don't think that you're supposed to act appropriately and reasonably, and especially be cautious of who you're around, and realize that we all live different lives, and you don't know who you're affecting behind their door. You don't know who they're going to grab bananas for. You know, like, you have no idea, like, what that life is outside of that space.
Absolutely. And I had my friend, like even my co-founder, she was kind of like, she's not really like, she wears a mask. She's, you know, she has someone she lives with who is, how do you call it? And, you know, what's the word? I keep forgetting these words. My God, Jesus, help me. She's like affected because she has like sickle cell. And so like she takes her precautions and stuff like that. But when I first got wind of everything that's going on, I was like, all right, I'll wear a mask, no big deal. And then I like, you know, I wasn't going to go out or do anything. I'm just going to, you know, literally quarantine because my mom was coming and then I was going to her. So I didn't want to interact with anyone.
And that's a different thing. Yeah. When you're like, okay, parents are coming into play.
But now I'm like, all right, I'll have my friend over because they, you know, like I no longer have the weight of, you know, being around people who are like, and so I put the responsibility on them to, like, if you're coming to hang out with me, just know where I've been because you're making the decision to come hang out with me. You know, like that's kind of how I put it. I was like, I'm okay. You know, and that's my decision. Like, I'm fine. I don't, if I were to get sick, I don't have to like I know I can survive it and get, you know, over it, but I don't have to no longer worry about, you know, like affecting.
100%. Because I'll go see friends on the beach. Yeah. But then if a friend on the beach is like, yeah, I guess I'm kind of cautious because I live with my grandmother. I go, well, I wouldn't be here then.
Exactly.
I don't have any people that I interact with that are in that percentage range of severe, like if you get it, it's a TKO for you. So you do have to like live within the boundaries that I think is important for yourself, and then be aware that other people have different restrictions. And that's the one thing I'm like, the grocery store should be safe for everybody, and outside, like, and then the bars I think are just a totally different scenario.
Oh my God, I don't even know. Like, I can't. I was like, listen, if you're in sneezing distance, just wear a mask. Just do it, you know? But like you said, like everyone has their own opinion and they go about it the right way. I think it's just about being mindful. And, you know, whoever you're interacting with, you know, that's on them as well. Like everyone has their own responsibility to uphold. And for me, like I'm very happy. Like I don't have anyone who can be affected. And so like, and I'm consistent around like the people that I do hang out with, you know? And so like, I have grown accustomed to being okay with like, okay, I can hang out with this person. I can, you know, even though we're still like trying to be quarantined and stuff like that, like I'm a little bit more lenient than I first was because I didn't understand what was happening in the, you know, like the craziness of it all. And I do have people close to me who have gotten it. And they did not have a walk in the park. It is like a real serious. People have lost, you know, their sense of smell and their taste. And even now my friend, my childhood friend, you know, she definitely feels different after it, like biologically.
Really? She had like the cognitive stuff where some people say that it's even kind of messing with some of their processes.
Yeah,
of,
I know
like,
some
memory
are definitely like dealing with some like side effects from having it.
Yeah.
So I don't think she necessarily does. I think it's more or less like just that, you know, like it's like a, you know, your body went through something, you know? And so again, it's like literally to each their own, you know, as long as you're not being a jerk and trying to tell people how to live their lives, then, you know, whatever.
And, you know, I think it's interesting though. So like talking to people, sometimes we'll say like, we just have to get used to this thing's kind of like a new normal. And you even see groups like Facebook and Google who have opted out of going in the office until July 2021. And I think that a lot of our businesses are trying to put us in I don't even know if those businesses will ever go back in the office because they
definitely won't. They officially like went remote.
And I know that like, I'm going to bet really big on community builders in the future. People think that we like somehow can have a better communication or just as effective talk here today as if we were in the same room. I completely disagree. I think that we could get to better depths. I think we could have a better dialogue if we were sitting here talking on the same couch. And so I think people like yourself who are mindful and building community all the time are going to have a really great growth in those businesses once we get out. And you might even not even have to call it by name as, you know, Launchpad. It's just like, oh, I just invite people to my house when we talk entrepreneurship. Those spaces are going to be clicking once the fear of this virus appropriately goes away when the epidemiologists tell us, hey, it's okay, open up the doors.
Exactly. And, you know, one of the things that I actually found hard to do during the season, because again, like you said, I love meeting the people, connecting with people. I love in-person things. That's, you know, I completely agree. I feel like, you know, being in person is, there's just such a connection to that.
Yeah.
And, it's just, it's hard, definitely for someone like me, because I live off of community. Like community is was forever my saving grace. And one of the things that was very difficult for me was to pivot to virtual, you know, and as tech savvy as I was, I hated it. I
Yeah.
hated Zoom meetings. I just hated it. And I did not take advantage of like the whole virtual events kind of thing. And it was very difficult for me because I really just valued, you know, the in-person stuff. So now having to like, you know, 3 months after the fact, 4 months after the fact, I am still learning on like just trying to like bring my businesses online. And because of COVID, I have brought one of those businesses online. And it has been definitely like life changing as far as like me getting used to speaking, being able to like address more than one person at a time from different places at the same time, which is kind of neat. And
Yeah.
it has in some ways made me feel less lonely because I'm not just connecting with people in my vicinity. I'm actually making an effort to connect with people all over the world. And I
Right.
feel like that is what that's like the bonus that came from this strange world we live in, is just the ability to connect with people and reach people quicker.
Yeah.
uh, because you know when you're in person you kind of focus like, all right, I got to focus on the local and all these things, and I kind of put myself in that box. But now I'm more or less like, okay, you know, we have an opportunity now to connect with people from anywhere. And I feel
Right.
like now I love how it's forced the culture of like networking to be more intentional because you can't leave,
Sure.
you know. And so that's something that I have really like just have felt like, man, I actually have been missing out on the power of technology. And that's something that I've like now mentally pivoted, like, okay, now I can really like assess how wonderful it is to be able to connect with people from all over the world, and how
Right.
crazy it is to be like, you know, like Twitter and Instagram have and LinkedIn have been such a like, yeah, you're told to like, yeah, you should be on these platforms and whatever, but now people have no choice but to build their brand online because
Mm-hmm.
this is the new normal. And so
Right.
that's something that like, even though I've struggled with in the beginning, I'm starting to catch up as well as really like just find to be a wonderful resource. And I'm connecting to like platforms and networks that I've never connected to before that have been tremendous in my entrepreneur journey for the last few months. So like I really like, even though it was hard, I think that now I've been more like I've just adapting, and that kind of like, you know, COVID has forced a lot of people to adapt. Um,
Right.
and I think that has just been like a wonderful outcome of all of this.
100%. Because like this purple politics thing for me, it's really like a video journal of me being able to connect with friends that inspire me, that are doing things, and I'm watching them kind of fight through the storm of what it's like to have COVID in their life, or, you know, have these different movements, see, you know, BLM take a new space in the political conversation. And I'm sorry if I'm like cringeworthy for some of my friends, maybe, but to me, this is just me kind of coping, right? Like this is me as an extrovert, as someone who's excited and needs to interact with people, just trying to adapt to what it feels like to be in this space. I hope it's not a complete new normal, but I am excited about the little things that I've been able to experience through it. Even just having a conversation like this with you, like I'm able to have a longer we've had phone calls like this before, but I've never had a spot where I'm like, okay, let's just save it. To be able to have a video journal that I can look back on in 10 years. And if anybody wants to watch it in current time, feel free as well. But I've watched you kind of go through this entrepreneurial journey and personal journey. And I feel like you've really woken up into this spot of a new level of mindfulness. I've really loved how you've kind of encapsulate that as part of your brand identity now. Is just you being Michelle. Like you're always mindful. You're always saying beautiful things on Instagram. You're saying honest things too. You're saying, hey, I'm having a really, really tough week, but this is how I'm overcoming it. What's it been like to take that journey? And how do you feel now in this new mindfulness space, and what are you doing with it?
So awesome question. And I can't wait to go in depth because mental health has been my jam for the last, like, I want to say a good 2 years. And, there's so much to what I want to say because there's a lot of aspects like BLM, being a person of color, growing up the way I did, and now being able to understand why my life took the trajectory that it did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only until I addressed my mental health that I understood how do I want to say this? Like, how not whole. Like I felt like part of me was missing in my journey. And I allowed a lot of the things that brought me down, whether it was my mental health, depression, ADHD, I allowed the like anxiety, that to be my normal.
Yeah.
And that it was okay to just be depressed. It was okay to be ADHD. It was okay to be anxious, but in an unhealthy way. Because like it is okay to have these ailments, but the part that wasn't okay was that I had to experience these things without a solution or at least a plan for them.
Mm-hmm.
It was just something that like if you stub your toe, okay, you stub your toe, you keep going. So it was kind of like me stubbing my toe every day and not like removing the thing that kept stubbing my toe, which is a weird analogy.
My dad always talks about mental health in this type of perspective, where he was a foot doctor, a foot surgeon his entire career, right? And so for 35 years, he had to explain to people that when you sprain your ankle, you need to stop running. And usually your ankle, when you sprain it, you do stop running, right? Like it hurts. And so you're like, oh man, I'm not going to go outside and run 3 miles because I see that my ankle is swollen. And that swollen, if might mean that it was broke, or maybe it's just a sprain.
Yeah.
And mental health, we don't really discuss in those terms, right? We expect you, Michelle, that when you say, oh man, I had a bad day, I say, okay, I understand you had a bad day yesterday, but today I need you to run a marathon for me.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works, because a body's a body, whether it's a brain or an ankle. It still needs to heal itself. Although those are not things that we can observe as easily in a physical sense, I can still observe it in the way that you smile or the way that your eyes are, or like all these different things. We need to be more patient when it comes to the process of mental health.
Absolutely.
And I've been there myself.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things, and I'm sure that you can, relate to this, is that, it's almost like when you're in this entrepreneurial space, it's like mental health is taboo. Like people are like, well, if you wanted to do this, you would do it anyway. And I'm like, that's not how mental health works. And a lot of that, I don't know if it just comes from like, I don't know, like the macho thinking where it's just like, well, you got to get to work and there's like no room for feelings or emotions. And I feel like that's something that needs to be destigmatized, because like we're human and there are real issues at hand. There are real problems that people deal with. And if not addressed, it will break you. And that's something that I had to learn, because I was dealing with almost like, I want to say for the last 2 years, I was having like panic attacks almost every single night. I was insomniatic for a better part of my Los Angeles journey. And I allowed it to be okay. Like,
and Los Angeles doesn't make that easier.
It does not. And so I'm kind of like, all right, cool, I have anxiety. That's it. Like there was no like, and I was like, oh, why is this happening? Oh, why can't I get over it? Oh. And then the next day it was like fear upon fear, and it just made it worse. So to the point that I just didn't want to sleep anymore, because I was so anxious about falling asleep that I didn't know what I was even anxious about.
I've had that exact same experience. I had anxiety attacks every day for 9 months, my sophomore year of college. There's a post that's going around right now on Instagram. It happened a little earlier in COVID. And it's like, if you haven't discovered your hustle yet, maybe you don't have it. And to someone who's dealt with anxiety, depression before and has been an entrepreneur, I go, that's just not true. Like, and they're saying it in the context of COVID. They're saying, like, if you haven't figured out how every day to wake up and try to win, you might not even be a hustler with all the free time you have. And because this is a daunting time. If someone is sitting in their bed and they're struggling through the depths of emotions that we're going through politically and culturally, socially, physically, personally, that's okay right now. It's okay to sit in those feelings for a while. That doesn't mean that you're not the human that you know that you can be. I had to deal with, the anxiety and depression and not being able to sleep. And there's nothing worse than not sleeping all night and the next morning kind of waking up to a roommate who's all like zippity doo. And you want to have that go in you too. And you know that you have it deep inside, but you know darn well that you need to go take a nap. And you need to take a nap before the day even starts because you didn't get the sleep last night. And depression tries to lie to you because it tries to tell you you're the only one that has it. And it tries to tell you, don't tell anybody that you have it because that will actually make it worse. Both of those things are an absolute lie. If you talk about being depressed and having anxiety, it makes it better. And you can't really do the woe is only me because a lot of people are actually going through this. And it's a thing that can be humbling, but that same humility that you develop through it can really be a strength in the long run. And you gotta not let it lie to you that like you aren't the person that can overcome it. And some of the different like things that even the meds will create in you, what will be social anxiety, you get the sweaty palms, you don't want to go see your friends on Friday nights. And you start to like tell yourself this lie. Well, maybe I'm just not that person anymore. It's a lie. It's not real. You will become that person. It's just going to take some time. But wow, it's a scary journey to have to go through. So I definitely have empathy for anybody that has gone through it or still is going through it. I still have to, the reason I run 3 miles every day and make sure that I have a smoothie and I talk to people like you in my life is because I'm always going through it a little bit, but I've learned that principles like eating well, getting outside and running, surrounding yourself with good people, being a part of faith communities is certainly a big principle of mine too. And surrounding yourself with friends that are having beautiful conversations, that's my healing component. There's no drug that's ever been able to do as much as those things in my life. So, it's a wild experience though. So I feel for you when you're just kind of popping out of that, but it can be a whole new shot of life once you feel like you're starting to break through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that have helped me in the last 2 years, not even like, honestly, I think, so after my brother died in April, I think that's when I got a little worse. I think obviously because I was in, grieving and trying to like understand the world that we're living in, how we're going to move forward. And on top of that, I was in school. And on top of that, I was still launching my beta during the launch week. And on top of that, I was working on my barter commitment that I made to be part of this mastermind. So I was working on top of being part of a master. There was so much happening in April. And not only that, like my marriage was on the rocks. Like there was just like it was just like COVID was like, here you go, here's a platter of the hot mess you're going to live in for the next 3 months and figure it out. And so it just happened that one night, I think it was the night we were returning back to Los Angeles from New Jersey, and I couldn't sleep to get on the plane. Like I was up all night working on things and just trying to figure out like, but my body physically was in pain while I was having an anxiety attack. And it was so bad that I just felt like it was like, this was going to be it. This was going to be the thing that like kills me. Like, that's how bad it felt. Right. And I was just like crying. Cause I was just like, why is this happening? Like, I can't do this anymore. I need to go to bed. I need to sleep. I need like a sense of normal. So the moment I got back, I did 3 things. One, I got a Fitbit. because I wanted to monitor my health, my sleep, and be able to track my, like, just have some motivation to track my steps, to be like, just, you know, like my co-founder, AKA my work wife, Alma, was like, when I got a Fitbit, it just helped me be more motivated to actually be more fit and stuff like that. And I was like, you know, that's a great idea. And that's, you know, and I remember when I was, you know, working out and the cool things with having a trainer before COVID, I felt better, you know? And so that was like, all right, I'm going to invest in this Fitbit because it's going to do a lot of things. What I didn't realize is that monitoring my heart rate actually quelled my anxiety, because I was able to actually put facts on my wrist and be like, oh, my heart rate is actually not that high. Because when your body goes into fight or flight, it feels like, you know, you're like, you know, your adrenaline starts pushing, you start, you know, breathing heavier, and then your heart rate accelerates. But I was able to actually like counter it, because I could see that my heart rate wasn't actually going up. I was just feeling whatever the chemical.
All the blood was rushing to your head. You're like, whoa.
And so that helped me take a breath and slow down. And
I love it.
And see how like maybe the heart rate would go up a little bit, but then it would come back down, because now I'm aware that my heart is actually not gonna like explode.
Right, because you take 3 breaths and watch it lower. You go, oh, this is me, not my heart popping.
Exactly. And so that actually put a lot of my anxiety into perspective, to the point where I haven't had an anxiety attack since I got my Fitbit.
Wow.
I went from having an anxiety attack like every day, every night, to maybe like, since I got it, it's been like 3 months, maybe I've had like 2. And even then it lasted no more than like 3 to 5 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the one thing I did. The second thing I did was, I started I started meditation. So that was really helpful. But then the moment I got back, I went to my doctor and I was like, I'm done. I'm done feeling this pain. I'm done feeling this anxiety. This is what I'm feeling, doctor. I need this to be done. I need my sleep back. I need to feel like I am going to make it the next day, basically, you know, like I was straight up with my doctor, and she was amazing. She was like, the first thing that's going to fix a lot of these problems is your sleep. So she gave me some drugs, some prescriptions. They were literally like antihistamines and very gentle things. I told her I was taking melatonin, then I was going to do some, you know, Viridian root, I think it's called, or something like that. Something like natural with a little bit of like, all right, prescribe something just to get me back on track.
Just never let them put you on Ambien, because Ambien is the worst drug.
That's too intense. But for the most part, I just needed something to help me fall asleep and keep me asleep. And so I told her, I'm like, I'm not big on drugs. Like I'm just not. And so I want something to blend with my natural, you know, like melatonin and all that stuff. And so that I went from literally, and you could track my Fitbit. I went from 3 hours of sleep to whole 7 hours to 8 hours, 9 hours. But the thing is that I had to address it. I had to say, no more. This is enough. This is not okay. My body should not be in pain, and I should not be okay with this pain, because I deserve to have a healthy, normal life. You know? And so addressing that was like the first, like that appointment was like, all right, this is the journey to getting back to like the best version of myself. And I don't know what that was going to look like, but I needed something to change, because I wasn't going to survive if this was the trajectory that I was headed. And so my Fitbit, my doctor appointment. And when I told my doctor about like, listen, I've had anxiety, I've been dealing with ADHD, I can't focus, and having sleep is not helping. And she goes, honestly, have you gone to see someone for your ADHD? And I was like, all I did was get diagnosed, and I never addressed it really. I did a coach, tried some, you know, like scheduling stuff, but that shit didn't work for me. And so I was like, okay, it's time to like really see a specialist. And so I found a psychiatrist. I had the appointment. He took a little molding, because like he wasn't really listening. I was like, I sent you the documents. I was like prepared in advance to tell you this is all the stuff that I was diagnosed with. Help. But he was like, and my doctor even said, hey, try Vyvanse or whatever. So my doctor was kind of like this weird doctor. He was like, yeah, this is, I think ADHD and is what's causing you depression, anxiety. And I think if you address that first, you might be valid. Okay. You know, like drugs, they're very, very interesting. So, you know, you kind of have to be a guinea pig for the first few months and whatever. I was like, oh, that's comforting. Cool.
Yeah.
But that's he was like really chatting really quickly. I was like, oh my God, this is the worst experience.
I've done the guinea pig thing.
Yeah. But I was like, well, I think what does really stress me out is ADHD, because I can't focus. Not focus doesn't make me I can't get my tasks done. Not getting my tasks done makes me depressed and anxious. And so let's just address ADHD first, which is what he suggested after he gave me the runaround. And then I went on the first time ever as a 30-year-old on ADHD medication.
Okay.
And for the first time ever, I feel partially whole. like I actually feel like I can think without having 900 thoughts being thrown in my brain back and forth like a freaking ping pong table.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, like it was the first time that I can actually do the things that I hate and sit through it and work through it. It was the first time that I can go on a hike and actually be aware of my surroundings because I'm slowed down and I can see everything around me without being so disassociative and like, oh, okay.
I love that.
And so being on ADHD meds was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm still working through like the medication. And again, medication's not for everyone, especially if you're not healthy. Like if you're not eating right and you're not taking care of yourself, you're not, you know, you don't care about preventative measures, like medication will always happen. Like there's always going to be a side effect.
There's always going to be little negatives with it, for sure.
And so that's something that I really had to like really recognize and kind of be like, okay, Michelle, like, you know, you don't, you know, you're not broken.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you just have this imbalance and there are ways around it. And so for me, it was ADHD meds, my Fitbit, you know, and going to the doctor and getting my sleep, you know, get like together. And I kid you not, when I got back from that trip and that whole week, just getting started on this journey of like, just being okay that I am not okay, but also like actually addressing it has completely made me, you know, a better founder, better entrepreneur. I'm more in control of my emotions, although the ADHD meds can make me a little bit aggro when I'm upset. That's a side effect, irritability. But at the end of the day, if I'm meditating, I'm fine. You know, like if I'm adding things that make my lifestyle a little better on top of that foundation, I think that I've grown as a human, as a founder, as a friend, because I'm aware and I'm more in control of my like attention and my focus and my priorities. And it's the first time in my entire life. And I've always been high functioning, which is another thing that's really funny. Like, well, you've always been able to do this, so why can't you do it now? Which is so dismissive and not okay.
Well, yeah, because people don't realize like the projects that you're not completing.
Oh, sorry, I lost you. I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
There you go.
Yeah, well, people don't realize the processes and the projects that you're not actually completing. Like you might be starting everything, but you're not completing stuff. Exactly. And that's what's difficult. Because for me, meds personally didn't end up working at the end of the day. I think I took them for too long. And I had a doctor that kept on upping them. So I took too much for too long. And then it became something that became addictive, you know? And so you do have to be careful of that. So keep within a dose that makes sense. Make sure that you're eating good meals before you take that. Because there is a lot of ADD medication out there that, you know, stops you from really desiring a meal throughout the day.
Well, that for me is not a problem since I'm trying to lose weight. No, but that's funny. I told my doctor that to joke. I was like, you know what? these are the side effects I have felt, and the only one that I'm looking forward to is the loss of appetite. But other than that, like, so that's like something.
You just got to force yourself to eat, but you'll want to probably just, and when you're forcing yourself to eat, make sure that you're eating like appropriate meals.
Yeah, absolutely. I have like a bunch of supplements that I started taking just for the sake of like making sure that I'm getting the nutrients I need.
Yeah.
Like I learned so much about, like it's funny. It's like, oh, if you have like an apple and some spinach, you're fine. But I'm like, I should be having way more greens. And so I got like a green supplement. And on top of that, I'm like, all right, I need to make sure that I'm like, all right, I can have a cup of blueberries and an avocado and then some broccoli at night. And then, like actually giving myself more servings throughout the day of things that I really enjoy is something that I've learned to do also during this time. And although like my appetite is a little suppressed and stuff like that, but I do have to like remind myself, all right, it's time to eat. It's time, because I can go
just
on
remind yourself and do it.
But like I am totally in control of the dose that I like. And that's something else too, because like I didn't want to up my dose at all. Like I was I'm already hesitant on taking drugs. So I'm like, all right, doctor, I'm gonna set the lowest dose and let's see where we go.
Good. And just stick to that once it works.
But even then, like the first month was great. And so I was like, but I was still daydreaming. Like, and that's a big thing about ADHD, like but it's not just any daydream. Like you're daydreaming, your vision is blurry, but you're aware that you're daydreaming, but you can't get out of it. And that's my biggest problem. And so I upped my dose just once. And even then, like, I'm probably going to end up going back down because I'm just like, I know my body more than anything. And this is what I want for my life. But like, I'm okay with being a guinea pig right now because I need to learn what works for me, And so like, it has definitely been, like just being aware of my mental health contributed to the decisions that I'm making that are making creating a lifestyle that I actually am proud of and feel good about.
That's awesome.
And as a person of color, there is such a big disparity in the education behind what someone needs health-wise, especially just because of access. And like my brother passed from not ADHD, sorry. He passed from HIV/AIDS. And unfortunately, he stopped taking his medications because he believed and fell into the trap where medications don't work for me. They're not, whatever. But I'm like, your medications are a preventative measure. This is something that you need in order for your body not to like, eat itself from the inside out. And unfortunately, because he lacked the education behind what he needed to survive, he died essentially from ignorance, which is what and it's something that really like, broke my heart, and something that really woke me up to the needs that people of color actually have in the health, sector, including mental health. And there's such a, like, it's so taboo to talk about your feelings as a Spanish person, as a Black person. It's like, so like, it's not manly, it's not strong. It's actually quite ridiculous, the amount of like crap people get from just not being able to address their mental health needs because it's a form of weakness. And unfortunately, that's what really, like, at the end, I want to say took my brother, because he did not have the tools and information he needed to survive, to understand what these drugs do and why. The doctors did not explain to them or to him what he was going through in a way that he would understand. He would just tell them, well, you're going to die if you don't do this. I'm like, well, that's not helpful. You have to explain to you what happened to your body. My brother, 41, did not know what a stroke was. He did not know that he was suffering the effects of a stroke, which was caused by HIV because of the way his body's already, deteriorating. So it was just a downward spiral, having to go back and forth from LA to the East Coast to try to educate my brother, but also like put the tools in his hand and empower him to be like, hey, we can make it if you do this. And, it's hard because I had to live my own life and try to survive in my own, with everything that was going back home. In my home, that I kind of feel responsible, not like, and I shouldn't, in a sense, because like, it wasn't my fault. He's a grown man. He made decisions that led to, ultimately to his death, unfortunately. However, like, part of me regrets not being more encouraging, because at this point I was just kind of tired of the ignorance that I was dealing with. But at the same time, like, this whole thing really taught me to be more compassionate. And so as my nephews grow older and, you know, his sons are essentially kind of like, you know, how do I say this? I want to say, like, you know, growing up and being these great men that they're becoming, I really want to make sure that they are, you know, they get the, basically, I want to say, the education that will help them, you know, grow into formidable men, you know, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. They're my whys, really, as to why I do anything. I'm like, I am the only person left in my family that actually has a brain. It's normally, that's how I feel. I'm just like, was I adopted? Because I swear the amount of like things I've dealt with, I was like, there's no way that I am part of this ridiculous family. But, you know, like, you know, they are my roots. And so I want to make sure that going forward in anything I do, I don't want people of color, especially during the Black Lives Matter movement, like, the most important thing that people do not recognize, especially in corporate structures or work settings, is that, you know, the mental health aspect of what we do when we're creating businesses or creating a culture in a company is essentially the most important thing. Because if without a proper, like, without a healthy mindset or, you know, a healthy mind, it doesn't matter what you do. Right. You can build an empire and it will fall if you don't take care of yourself, you know?
Absolutely.
And I saw, you know, like with my brother and his dreams, I saw that empire fall because he did not address the most important thing in his life, which is him and his health. And so that's something that's really big and something that I definitely am incorporating into my brand. I definitely want, so we're creating this initiative. It's to help 1,000 people of color start a business by awesome. July 2021. And we called the initiative Business of Color, and it's part of Everlaunch. And in the journey, and that's something that we're doing to raise money. We're kind of fundraising based on like a crowdfunding platform that's specifically made for women founders.
I love it.
So one of the things that we're trying to raise money for is not only to, you know, get our dream team together and be able to like do more campaigns and have more robust marketing tactics, but one of the most important things is to get our product into the hands of 1,000 people of color, but also create program and the network that addresses mental health, financial literacy, and creating, you know, basically leadership skills that entrepreneurs need to survive this business climate. And so that's something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I'm excited for it because, you know, if we raise our goal, you know, we can propel and build the tools that we really want for Everlaunch.
Yep.
And create a community of healthy, amazing people of color that are just trying to, you know, put their wonderful ideas into the world. And thankfully, we have a couple of case studies for this program, and we're learning so much about what they're creating. And it's been such an incredible experience just to learn. Like one of our case studies, she is from Sierra Leone, and she is a beautiful person of color. She is hard of hearing. Okay. And she's trying to create an app for hard of hearing deaf people so that, you know, they can read and like, instead of reading like a book or text, they can read sign language. So they're translating all the like audibles and like podcasts into sign languages.
Oh, that's wild.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, this is what we live for. We're living for like people who have wonderful ideas, but, you know, don't understand a clue about how to start a business. And on top of that, like having a network that relates to you and what you struggle with, you know, as a person of color, you know, she was deeply affected by the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, Breonna Taylor and, you know, everyone who's passed just in this last freaking, like the riot, like everything. And she lives in downtown as well, like right where the riots happened.
Oh, wow.
And it's just, everything is so like, it's such a great like time right now to like just band together. And I want to see more people of color at the forefront. You know,
Absolutely.
I want them to have the tools to succeed and put an end to the disparity. And we've been seeing a lot of wonderful people kind of like, you know, shine during this time, create businesses, create movements out of this, you know, season. And I think that what we're trying to do is not only fun because we get to hear about these amazing ideas and, you know, meet these incredible geniuses,
Yeah.
but also, you know, we are empowering people on another level. And that's the most exciting part about what we're currently doing. And so that's the initiative that should take place at the end of the month. Well, the campaign starts at the end of the month so that we can get money for it. And then we're going to start building out the program to
So in order for that initiative to happen, you're looking for 1,000 women that are looking to launch businesses within.
Not just 1,000 women. We're looking for 1,000 people of color in general.
Got it. Okay.
It turns out that a lot of women follow me, so it ends up being majority women.
Got it. Okay.
It's open to all people of color, and
okay, cool.
You know, it's a program dedicated to like take not only Everlaunch to the next level, but bring all the resources that are available to people of color. In a specific section just like made for people of color.
Well, and I think this is a really good test for your app. It's a good test for the community. And then I'm really interested to see what type of feedback you get as the builder of this, to see what is the differences that maybe a person of color does have in building a business, right? And to having those appropriate resources in a conciled like place to then walk you through those steps in this gamified type of space.
Yeah.
What an unbelievable resource that you'll be building. And I'm sure it has to be so much fun being the leader of that ship and to building that type of community.
It literally, like, I feel like for the first time in my life, I'm living because I am serving people at a higher capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And it has become an incredible, just such a joy to see people be excited about their projects and finally have relief.
Yeah.
And you know, I've been working and coaching women and just because again, my network is women. So I'm like, let's take advantage of this wonderful like network of
absolutely
powerful women. But I've been coaching them and learning about like what they need and, you know, what we can help with. And it's been fun just one by one, like hearing, you know, one, how I've helped them, to what area they were stuck in and how Everlaunch like dislodged the way of thinking. And, you know, essentially Everlaunch is just meant to, and this is like my quote, like my fancy quote that I give like all my interviews, right? It's like my brand quote. I'm like, I'm trying to bridge the gap between dreams and limitations, you know, like I want to eliminate the I can't do this from the vocabulary of aspiring entrepreneurs, especially people of color, because as a person of color, you know, yes, I have had privilege, and I give that credit to my good looks, you know, but that has gotten me, you know, sadly it's gotten me in a lot of doors. And I definitely took that to my advantage.
Pretty girl privileges sometimes trumps a lot of them.
I know. I was very, very aware of how my looks can get me into certain doors that normally I wouldn't have gotten into.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's hilarious, but hey, I got to use what I got, you know?
Right.
And so, but, you know, like coming from one side, like, yes, I've had privilege. I've gotten opportunities that it's absolutely insane, you know? But also like, I also have experienced disparity growing up. You know, like I lived in a homeless shelter at 17 with my mom. You know, I've moved over 50 times in my lifetime because you know, I didn't have the money. I didn't grow understanding what money meant. And my mom and I were not those people. We were, you know, she was a single mom, caring for her daughter and her son was a vagabond who did whatever he wanted. And so like at the end of the day, it was just me and her mostly, and my grandma in a, you know, in a retirement home. Like, you know, I know what it's like to not have. I remember like, you know, I went from, at 5 years old, I had like all the Barbies in the world. And then suddenly people came to my house, and like, I think it was the Marshalls. And I think it had to do with my father being in prison that I recently, like maybe 5 years ago, learned about, you know, and then just like understanding that scenario and putting the puzzles together to how it affected me growing up and not having that stability, and, you know, like moving from house to house, having roommates of all kinds. And, you know, we never had a place to call our own. And not even that, but like also like I remember Christmases like where I would get a sock and I would cry because I got a pair of socks, you know, and it was the first thing. It was like, you know, it was the nicest thing my mom could do for me because it's all she had.
My grandma would always give us socks. We were like, all right, here comes grandma's socks.
My husband's mom gives us socks for Christmas, and it's the best thing in the world. I'm like, thanks, Mom. You know, but like I know what it's like to not have and to be where I am today, you know, and it was from honestly sheer hard work. When I got to LA, I had $200 to my name and no plan. Like, trust me, I thought I was going to be homeless again. Right. And so like being who I am today and having an apartment with my name on the lease, and, you know, having the ability to say, I'm going to go buy food, you know, when there were days that I did not know if I was going to have food in the fridge, you know, to being like just here, like having a laptop, having a freaking iPhone 11 Pro Max, you know, like honestly, like I would have never dreamed of it. And so like, and
unbelievable.
And on a side note, like I love the conversations I have where like, well, you are a model and you know, you're living life right now. I was like, do you know my 9 to 5 or where I come from or my values or my whys for you to be judging me in the first place, you know?
Right.
And so,
because we all make Instagram look really good.
Oh, of course.
And that's the difficult thing, right? Like people have to stop realizing that this is Instagram is no longer a journal of my day-to-day life. It is basically a promotional tool to help people understand what's their highest highs. Yeah. Or if you're launching businesses or you know, you want to have conscious conversation, you've always done a good job of being mindful on that and being willing to talk about it. But
and that's something that, you know, like I don't take for granted. Like I don't take any of this for granted. And it's really has helped me connect with people of color who have experienced these disparities. I'm like, listen, this is not the end for you. Like if I made it out, you're going to make it out. And but even then, like even saying that, you know, could come off dismissive because I still don't know the struggle, because it could be mental struggle. It could be an emotional struggle. It could be a bad toxic relationship. There's so much that are in the weight of those words. Because for some people, you know, living in the projects is all they're ever going to know, because that's all they've ever known. You know, that's all I ever knew. You know, like I didn't know how to not live by myself. I didn't know what it was like to be on my own. You know, I didn't learn until I was 24 to be on my own. And that was because my mom was like, peace. You know, like, you know,
that was not chosen. You were
that was literally like, I came back home and everything was gone kind of,
oh,
you know?
My.
And so like, you know, like I've had that struggle where it's just like, you know, where am I going to go now kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like, you know, there is a very, very big gap. Like I don't know how I came out so lucky with the drive, the ridiculous super freak drive that I have, you know, and maybe I attribute it to like the first few years of my educational life to being in a private school before that was like dismantled and I went to public school. But, you know, compared to the people back home my old, like people, the acquaintances that I've known from like junior high or high school and seeing where their lives are at now, completely different from like, you know, there is the same mentality. And I think it's just something that, you know, it's like I don't know, it's some type of like mental limitation that people of color, and it's not that I don't know, but it's oppression, you know, it's a systematic oppression that happens when the comforts of like, here's the benefits that the government can give you, and this is all that you're gonna be able to have access to, not knowing that there's an entire universe like filled with resources and filled with these things that can propel them to the next level. It's like it's a sad reality that I've come to know because I was there, you know. And it wasn't until I stumbled across, like, if it wasn't for my curious heart and the professors and the teachers that were like, you know, don't do what I did, and I settled, you know, like I had those high school teachers were like, listen, I worked for Cyndi Lauper one day and now I'm here. All right. I was like, so don't be me. I was like, got it. Don't be you.
That's what I think is so great about Everlaunch in your app, is when you're talking to an entrepreneur, and especially a fresh one, they'll be like, well, I can't get 10 clients today and make $1 million, and I can't start my company today. It's like, well, no, you can't. But can you find 3 referrals to start building your website? Can you find, let's brainstorm 10 to 12 people that you could reach out that could potentially be clients. Could you just write a mission statement today? Like starting to now, if each one of those things was only one day, those are highly achievable things. So when you're in business, sometimes you get way too caught up in these expectations of like, well, I can't do it. Well, it's like, what can't you do? Well, I can't build the whole business today. It's like, well, of course you can't build the whole business today, you know? And so that I love, that is the space that you build from. And you come from all of these other factors too, of understanding what the disparity of wealth feels like, what it feels like to be black and brown in America, what it feels like to be a female, what it feels like to be an initial founder, what it feels like to lose a business. Exactly. And so for you to build something with taking in all of that experience, to now create a guided space to just have little checkoff boxes of, oh yeah, I can actually apply for this grant, you know, and you're not going to apply for a grant in one day. A grant's going to take you a week. It might even take you a month to apply for, and to break those different things down into spaces that are actually chewable. You know, you can't finish the whole meal in one day.
And that's why exactly why I locked the other things. Like, you're going to go through this one by one.
I love it.
And it's important because, like, I feel like the value that I bring comes from my experiences, from my multifaceted. Like, I've started so many different businesses and only like 3 have actually worked, you know?
Sure.
And, you know, and I come from different industries. Like, I've always been, and, you know, I like to say, like, my new tagline is like, ADHD made me stronger, because I was able to like skip so many different, like I would start something and never finish it. That was like my trait, right? So very ADHD.
I've been there, done that.
Finish. But because I started so many things, I learned so many tools. I learned so many like different industries. Like, I was in the music industry, you know, and I was in the fintech industry. I was like, you know, like, it's insane. Like, you know, I was an artist. I was a Zumba instructor.
You're in a rock band, right?
I was in a pop punk band. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Still available on Spotify because my bassist will not let that album go.
I love that.
And so, like, you know, I have all the experience, but one thing has been common. I love business, no matter what. If it was the business of music, the business of art, my main goal was like, how do I make money today? You know? And that was like the New York hustle in me. Like, I needed to figure out how I was going to survive from point A from point B, you know?
That's so good.
And it's just insane because like for me, one of the best things that I've learned is like, I want to try anything. And it was from someone who like really spoke to me back before when I came to LA. It was like, he said, I tried everything until something stuck, you know? And I was like, that's kind of like me, like nothing stuck yet, so I can keep going, you know? Yeah. And that's my like tidbit to like, for everyone. It's just like, try until something actually sticks. And for me, Everlaunch stuck. Launchpad stuck, you know. What I'm doing now, a subsidiary P, it's sticking, you know. Yeah. And so essentially it's like even though Everlaunch necessarily doesn't even make that much money right now, like at all, really, it's stuck because I'm committed to people. And I'm committed to something that I'm already passionate about, which is people, like people attaining their dreams,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so essentially, like, I didn't have like all these experiences that I've had, they did not go to waste. And nothing is wasted when you're an entrepreneur. Not one experience you
Every
have.
day is a day to learn. Even
It is a
if you're
literal
learning about
day.
something that has nothing to do with your business, there's still value there as long as you're actually placing your focus on it.
Yeah, exactly. And you can pocket it, right?
Yep.
And share it with someone. Like, oh, I can't, like, I used to be really into wanting to build events internationally because I wanted to travel. And so I found this website that helps you build itineraries for retreats that you can lead yourself.
Cool.
And they have partnerships with resorts all over the world. And I was just like, this is exactly what I was looking for. And then I went to a meeting one day and
You
I was
can
like,
do that on Airbnb now, right? Where you can be like a leader of retreats.
yes. And so now there was another one where what's the word I'm looking for? Oh yeah. Yeah, I went to a meeting and this flight attendant was like, I want to build, you know, these retreats for flight attendants who have like the off days and they want to fly to somewhere because they can fly anywhere, right?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, have you heard of this website? You know? And so it was like perfect. I was like, even though I wasn't going to use it anytime soon, I gave it to someone, you know? So
Yeah.
nothing literally is like wasted. And that's my favorite thing about entrepreneurship. Everything you learn is applicable, will be applicable if it's not already.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's wild. Well, I'm so excited about everything that you have going on. How can people be involved in this next initiative for Everlaunch? Where can you sign up?
Yeah. So the first thing to do is to follow us on all of the social media, which is Try Everlaunch. And to stay tuned because it's not announced yet. You have like the first announcement.
Like insider knowledge. All right.
Insider knowledge, yeah. Exclusives, right? And so essentially we're not launching the initiative until we launch our fundraising campaign.
Okay.
Which will be at the end of the month, August 31st. Can't believe we're already in August. Holy crap. But if they want to support and follow us and try the app, they can just go to everlaunch.io or our social media, which is at Try Everlaunch.
I love it. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your life experience, sharing the businesses that you're hustling with. This has been an awesome conversation today. Anything else that you want to leave us off with before we close out here?
Nothing is wasted. It's so funny. That's like my favorite thing to say is like nothing is wasted and you get a lot of more value by helping people for free. And I say that because like I started coaching people for free and those people ended up being my clients because the investment in people is better than the monetary outcome because you become someone who's trustworthy. And that's a big, big lesson that I've learned, like out of like serving people from the kindness of my heart, I ended up earning way more and not just monetary. It's also like friendships and relationships and networks. And so, yeah, serving people out of the kindness of your heart will take you a long way.
I love it. Well, God bless you all. Godspeed. Hope to see you next time. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on and we'll see you all later.
Thank you for having me.